Welcome back to our mini-series, The Lone Screenplay Winners, where we talk about films that slowly won an Oscar for the writing categories. My name is Matthew Anderson, and today we have back on the podcast Riley Quinn, who was last here on the episode almost 2 years ago. It's time flies by really quickly. But he was back on. He was on here before with Logan, and now he's back on with Sling Blade. So, how you doing, Riley? It's been a
Hey
while.
Matthew. Yeah, it's been a while, but thanks for having me. I'm a big fan, so keen to to chat about this movie and a bit of the kind of strange Oscar history and uh I guess lasting legacy of this movie.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting discussion, at least on my part. But I'll get to that in a moment after I go through a little intro spiel for the show. So since we've got a lot to discuss in regards to the film and its Oscar weird history trajectory, so to speak, we're just going to jump right into it. We'll be doing like our other episodes have been, even on the Logan episode, our spoiler-filled discussion for Sling Blade. This film was released in 1996, and yeah, and usually this is the part where I bring up the fact that uh, while and I obviously do encourage people, if you have a chance or have the opportunity, to please watch the movie first, get a copy of it, physical media, whatever the case may be, to watch the film and then hear our discussion. Unfortunately, I went out of my way to look everywhere in the United States to try to get a copy of my own through Amazon Prime, through maybe just trying to get it through the Amazon site itself. It Unfortunately, there's just time restraints just didn't allow me to get a copy in time. I did get a chance to rent it at the library, but that's a whole other long spiel I can get into probably off air with you, Riley, in terms of what happened there, because
Okay.
that was a hassle. It was like
Yeah.
a really big hassle to go through the whole thing. So yeah, so I encourage everyone, if you can, get a copy of it or find some way to watch it and then hear a conversation, or just hear us talk about it if you'd like. But it will be a spoiler filled discussion. I will include in my link that if you'd like to get a copy of any of the materials I use for the podcast, such as equipment, the some of my I don't know, stuff that I use for reference, such as the Oscar Wars book by Michael Schulman. I encourage everyone to grab a copy of that as well. It's a really interesting read as well, and it will also give us the answer to what happened with this race. But anyways, on to the film at hand. This was written and directed by Billy Bob Thornton, who adapted his written short film. Some folks call it a Sling Blade, and the film takes place in Arkansas, where Childers is released from mental hospital after serving his time for murdering his mother and boyfriend. As he attempts to adjust to live outside, he befriends Frank Wheatley and moves in his home with his mother Linda and abusive boyfriend Doyle. Determined to protect his new friend, Carl devises a way to save Frank from years of Doyle's abuse. And really, this is a movie that I'm curious to know why you chose this for your chance to come back on here. And this is, for the record, everyone who's listening, this has been something that I've been wanting to get Riley back on for, regardless of what film it was. It's just our schedules didn't align, and there were other guests I wanted to get through, and every time I tried asking him, I'm like, damn it, I've already lost my shot. So yeah, so I'm curious as to why you wanted to choose this one.
Yeah, this is it's always I hadn't seen it before, so that was one thing, is that it was a chance to see it and discuss it with without sort of any, I guess, preconceived ideas about what it was or what I thought of the movie. But I just find it really interesting as just a film in Oscars history. The fact that it won adapted screenplay in the year that it did. There's a lot of stuff about independent film, and this was kind of like an indie darling of that, one of the indie darlings of that year. But beating the English Patient, which was like this juggernaut that swept almost every other category, and the fact that it was, I think, the second time a movie not nominated for Best Picture won adapted screenplay, and the previous time was 1952 with The Bad and the Beautiful. So
Yep.
if I know you're a stats man, Matthew, and this kind of did defy a lot of the stats in many ways. and it's not really something that's been repeated. I think Gods and Monsters is the only other time that a movie not nominated for Best Picture has won this award. So the fact that it kind of was this little movie that kind of overcame this enormous like juggernaut and now and like was this huge kind of phenomenon in those few months of that Oscar season, but now isn't really discussed as much, is also interesting to me as well.
Was this? I assume this. You said this was your first time watching the movie. Had you seen any of Billy Bob Thornton in other films or television work before?
Yeah, yeah, like I guess he's always been kind of ubiquitous. He's in so many different things, and you know, um, it's a lot of like supporting parts, and I do like him a lot. I think, but it's interesting. I think that people came to this movie without really knowing who he was, and
Yep.
kind of came out of nowhere, and they were like, "Who is this guy that directed and wrote and starred in this movie?" And we've never heard of him. And I think there was a bit of like, people love that narrative, and I think that's a big part of this whole movie and campaign is the narrative of who Billy Bob Thornton is. And I think they kind of thought, in many ways, he was this kind of Hollywood outsider who came in, and I think a lot of people kind of thought he was kind of this country bumpkin type. I think in reality he'd already been in like several kind of major films, but no one really knew him at this stage. So yeah, I think that's interesting as well. And that was really, from what I understand, that was Miramax really capitalized on that idea that he's this outsider. He's come in and he's kind of taken the town by storm.
I think at the time, if I'm not mistaken, because I didn't get a chance to look this up, I think one of his bigger films he was associated with before this, and even then it was a really small part, was Tombstone.
Okay,
There might have
yeah,
been other films he had done before this. I'll look up in just a moment what else there were. But yeah, this was the film that put him on the map as a talent to begin with. And I I'll be brief with this, and I don't want to get into too much out of respect for uh, my relatives. My stepsister was dating someone at the time. I can't remember where their family were located, but I think it was her and my mom and my stepdad went over to their house to watch. I guess it was like a holiday tradition, I guess, of theirs to watch Sling Blade because they watch it
wow,
every year
yeah,
around the holidays. And so the first time I saw it was like, all right, mom suggested I watch this. And I'm like, all right, I'll get around to it eventually. And I did. It was about maybe over 5 years ago I saw it. And I came away from it originally being like, it was fine. It was entertaining enough. And I thought, all right, well Riley has chosen, he's the brave soul to choose this for the podcast. I'm like, all right, I'll give it a watch again. And I unfortunately came away with the same feelings I did the last time around, where I thought it was fine. I definitely understand why he won an Oscar for this, and I'm glad that he won something for his efforts on this, whether it was in the adapted screenplay category, which we will talk about with the award section, what happened there, and my theories about that as well. But even just the performer, I think he's really good in the film. Like, he's playing a character who is, I don't want to say the R slur, but essentially he is a character with means, and he plays it really well to where he never quite felt so disrespectful with the role, and he's playing it with such earnestness that he
yeah,
is essentially trying to play him in a positive way, even though he is a killer. This guy does kill people. Like, he killed his mom and her
mm,
boyfriend, and also at the end he kills Doyle too.
yeah,
There's no real surprise there unless if you don't know what the movie is or what happens. But there is such a sincerity, or yeah, there's sincerity to the character, and even a little bit of a warmth to the guy, because he really does become Frank's like surrogate father figure almost, because he doesn't have one in his life. His actual dad committed suicide, and Linda, who's the mother of Frank, has a co-worker who's gay. And I guess in the world presented in the film, it's like no one's really there to have Frank become like a man or teach him how to
yeah,
become a man, and it sort of has to boil down to uh Carl. and I thought, yeah, like the way they presented that character, I thought was fine. And I could see some people being offended by this portrayal of the character, even how Linda's co-worker is presented in the film. But I mean, it's of its time when it came out, and I don't know. I feel like there are other more offensive portrayals of people with means, like Carl, and of gay characters, especially. You look at some of the other stuff that's been going on over the last like 20 years when you see like Sean Penn playing I Am Sam, or when you
Yeah.
have Rosie O'Donnell playing Riding the Bus, I think it was called, I think,
Mhm.
um, which are much more offensive. And
Yeah.
those are ones where they're trying to go for the award stuff. And Billy Bob Thornton is not. I mean, you even mentioned it too. It's an independent movie. It was $1 million was the budget. The Weinstein Company bought it for 10 million and thought, all right, well, we got some kind of hit on our hands, maybe. And it grossed over like 34 million worldwide, which is
Yeah.
impressive. And even to this day, I go online and I'm looking up and I'm like, I'm a little bit surprised, but not really, as to like this has gained like a following since it's come out. And I totally understand why people really like this a lot. But that's just my long spiel or ramble, I guess.
Yeah. I guess
Yeah.
kind of off the back of kind of the performance, and I do think, yeah, it is a really good performance, and it's definitely a role that an actor, you get the sense that as an actor he probably wrote this role for himself, because it's a role that gives him so much to do, and he gets, monologues, and he gets a lot to work with as an actor. So I think there's definitely, like,
Mhm.
looking at the screenplay, you can look at it framed as a vehicle for an actor to really flex their muscles in a way that maybe they haven't, because obviously he didn't have a big kind of leading man career before this. But I think they never are specific with what his, I guess, you could say, like, what his condition is in the film, and that probably helps. You don't kind of focus as much on that or the potential problematic aspects, because it isn't. He just is the character that he is, and they don't kind of try to diagnose him or go too much into that. And yeah, I do think it's we can talk about it maybe later, but the character arc, and you kind of mentioned briefly the John Ritter character and being very much of its time, which is very true. But also there is that kind of touching moment at the end, not to skip to skip straight to the end, but when when Carl kind of almost like entrusts him to be there for the young boy, and sees that he views him as like a nurturing and actually a good figure. So it's kind of like, I do think there are some aspects that are maybe more forward thinking than other films at that time.
Yeah, and again, it really just showcases his talents as an actor.
Yeah.
And again, like we always say with these kind of roles, it's so easy to go for the clear Oscar bait kind of role. I wouldn't say it's quite on par with this, but it reminded me a little bit of like Emma Stone with Poor Things, where it's almost like a tightrope
Mm.
balance where you have to find a bit of sincerity, or at least enough to root for the character as they're going on their arc with the role, but they're able to find just enough of a balance to where they're able to show off their acting chops without having it feel so like this is too much acting kind of thing. But he
Yeah.
is he is a solid leading man in the film. And I was also looking too. I'd forgotten he had wrote One False Move, which is out
Hmm.
on the Criterion Collection. He starred and had a hand in writing that film. In fact, I own a copy of it here at the house, but
I
I
need to
haven't
see
gotten
that.
around to watching it yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I do too. Now that I've seen this, and I'm like, I'm curious to know what his writing talents were in other movies. Also, I should mention to our audience that this was based off of a short film. Some folks call it a Sling Blade. And so I was curious to know if you ever got a chance before hopping on here, if you got a chance to watch the short film this was based off.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to see it, but did you watch it?
Okay. I watched it years ago. And I was skimming through some of it a couple days ago. It's almost like a beat by beat representation of what happens in the first 10-15 minutes.
Hmm.
And that's essentially what it is. It's just shot in black and white, and someone else had directed the film for Billy Bob. um but yeah, it's a almost shot for shot remake of that scene, pretty much what Whiplash did, where
Yeah.
Whiplash took only like a scene of the page and then made it a short film. And I will say, I don't. I would like to go a little bit more into this research, maybe after the show is done. But I'm curious to know if this was a case of maybe I don't think it was, but I do wonder if this was a case of, was it like Whiplash where he needed to get financing done, so he created the short film and someone
Mhm.
else directed it, or was this honestly like this is what he did as a short film, and then after that he's like, all right, I'm going to create the whole film as is? Because if it
Yeah.
was the latter, where he just created the whole arc after, like what happens once he gets out of the mental ward, and I'm like, okay, that's an interesting idea for Billy Bob to tackle, not just as an actor, but even as a writer, especially when he's dealing with similar themes that other directors would eventually do later on in their career with stuff like, second chances and
Mm.
redemption. And even asking, having us, the audience, ask the question of, should we let someone like this person out even though their sentence is up? Maybe we should assist them. Why aren't we giving these people the tools to survive within the world and not feel so lonely and so afraid of the world?
Yeah.
um
That's the thing, is like he's kind of left, and he's kind of left on his own. Like he's released, and then it's kind of like, okay, now you kind of got to fend for yourself. And that they're definitely, I don't know if how much the film is like intentionally commenting on that, but
mhm,
it makes you think that, yeah, that there needs to be support out there, um, in these situations. Which there is, that is, I think there isn't like support in the sense of actual things in place, but it's more the kindness of kind of people that he ends up relying on. And
mhm.
not to stray too far from, I guess, what you were saying about the short film, Matthew, but it's refreshing that people are kind of nice and non-judgmental. I think like this could easily have veered into like kind of cruelty and people being mean, and most of the people, pretty much everyone outside of Doyle, kind of just take him. They're like, yeah, you're reformed, like you did something bad, but where this is a new start, a fresh beginning, and I think that's really nice. And he gets the job, fixing, I think, the lawnmowers and the motors and stuff, and this family take him in. So I did really like that and appreciate that aspect of it, that it wasn't kind of the cliche portrayal of it, of how people might react negatively to this guy.
Oh yeah, and even at the beginning when you get to the food store, not the food store, but
Oh yeah,
the
I think
burger
it's called the
joint,
Frosty
you
Cream.
think
Yeah.
to yeah, yeah, and you think to yourself, oh, okay, this is how everyone's going to react that way. But it's like, nope, no, just the one person. That's really it. I mean,
Mm.
everyone does give him weird looks, but it's not like anything more than like, look at that disgusting man. Let's
Yeah.
ostracize him. It's like, no, it's just I think the next scene after that, he meets Frank at the wash place, uh, and immediately it tells you right off in the beginning, it's like, okay, this is going to work out well, at least with the two characters, and that is for me something that I started getting back into the film a little bit, and obviously this is your first time watch, but for me, it's very much uh, when I started rewatching this, and I was like, okay, there are some parts here that is getting me into the movie, particularly adding that relationship with the kid. And I also like the fact that it's not just a father son like relationship, but it's
Yeah.
also, it, to me at least, it felt like Carl saw a little bit of himself even at that time in this boy.
Hmm.
Like he's roughly around the age that
Yeah.
Carl's was when he committed the crime. And I like that idea of, again, like second chances, to be like, okay, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to protect this boy and that he doesn't go down the road that I went into, because he's going to end up in the mental ward, or even worse, in jail. And I like that concept of, again, even this idea of sacrifice, of willing to be like, I'm willing to sacrifice my own freedom just to make sure that you guys are free from this monster. And even though it's a very simple messaging for people, it really does speak to a lot of people, especially within South of America. Like that's really where I would say some of or at least a good chunk of the audiences would resonate with the film. But that's just my take. I feel like I'm talking more about
Mm.
it than you. Were there any other scenes or
Yeah.
any thoughts that you'd like to
Well,
bring up about the
y-
movie that I'm not bringing up?
I think like two things that come to mind is one is like the I guess the character that he's created. is like fascinating because you kind of have to deal with the dichotomy of who he is in the sense that he's on the surface like, and I think he comes across as like kind of harmless and really like gentle and kind, and then in the back of your mind that that he's capable of these really horrible things, and I think that's part of the fascination that people had with this character is that dealing with the two sides and trying to match them together, which I think that's inherently kind of fascinating, and that's something that kind of keeps you engaged is just like how does this guy work, like the fact that we like him but then we know what he's done in the past and you start to get the sense of what he's going to do again in the future as the story progresses. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, of that kind of playing off of the two sides.
Definitely, and I did appreciate that there was this unpredictability to the character, that you didn't really know what was going to start flipping his switch, especially
I just
when you
remember
get
the
to
scene,
Doyle.
yeah, when he
Oh, go
has
ahead.
the hammer walks into the room with the hammer, that's
Yeah,
when you kind of go, oh, okay, yeah,
yeah, like
you know that.
it's starting. Yeah, that path is starting to get there. Oh, definitely. Yeah, I thought of that about that too. Even on the rewatch, I'm like, yeah, the path is starting there. But yeah, but no, it's just he really is like, yeah, Billy Bob is really good in the movie, and I could definitely see why a lot of people gravitate towards that character. And for a story like this, with a lot of like a lot of darkness going on in the movie, you need a character like, I almost said Frank,
Mhm.
Carl, to be likable. Like, you need to empathize with this character and understand what he's going through. And again, and by establishing again with that kid relationship he has, that's, I think, the key as to why this film is successful with audiences that I've talked with, or even seen online about, this is one of my favorite films of all time. I cried my eyes out of the last 15 minutes because of how powerful it was. And I totally get it. It just for me, when I see movies, I want a little bit more complexity to them. And not saying that
Yeah,
there aren't complex ideas here, but it just how it's presented is also the other thing I do want. And I do feel like a debut film like this for Billy Bob Thornton is good,
mm,
but a lot of it, in my opinion, relied a lot more on the performances and the writing.
yeah,
And that's really something that I think is a good start for a debut film. But yeah, it's just a personal preference for me, is all,
yeah. It's
as
a
far as like what I would like to see.
I think it is like it is like kind of a simple movie, and like it's a pretty straightforward story, and I think the simplicity of it is also reflective of like this is a very simple world that they all come from.
Hmm.
It's and I don't know if this is a world that even exists anymore, but it's kind of this very, I don't know, the word is just simple. Like you don't
Hmm.
see a lot of like I want to say like technology or like the pace is slower. Like it's kind of, I guess, this part of the world, which I think is maybe it's like Arkansas. Um,
Yeah, it's set in Arkansas.
yeah, and I think that's kind of the part of the simplicity is the setting and the world in which it comes from. And I think another thing that what like, and I'm kind of I probably liked it a little bit more than you, but I don't think it's like a perfect movie in any way.
Hmm.
Um, and you did mention the performances, which I just wanted to touch on for a second, and I think that it's actually a really strong cast, but really like Lucas Black as Frank, the boy, is actually it's like
Yeah.
one of the best, I think, child performances, and that part of what makes that relationship work so well, and like actually the whole film works so well, is that he is so good in that part.
Well, I find it really interesting because when I first saw this, I thought, yeah, Lucas Black, like, he's okay in the film. Because I everything else I've seen from him outside of this has not been great, in my
Mhm.
opinion. And then I rewatched him in this, and I'm like, he's actually, I didn't give him enough credit. And I think a lot of that comes from Billy Bob Thornton, as not just as an actor, but even as a director too. Because I mentioned, even on the Anatomy of a Fall episode and other films as well, a lot of times when kid actors don't give good performances, it really comes down to the director themselves and not the kid
Yeah,
actors. Now,
exactly. Yeah,
if the kid actors decide to continue that career into adulthood, and they continue to be bad, then it's like, okay, it's clear maybe you're just not really getting the hang of things as an actor, and that's, not everyone can. Um, but I think with this case though, Lucas Black did a pretty good job with the film, and it's because of that connection he has with Billy Bob Thornton. Well, again, as a director and as an actor, he's able to give some good work too, and even other actors in the film. Dwight Yoakam
He's
is
good.
good too as the
Yeah.
abusive boyfriend. Um, it was nice seeing Robert Duvall in the film too, even if it was just for one scene in the whole film. Um,
It's kind of
I'm
funny.
really curious to know how they got him. Go ahead,
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm curious as well. I think I don't know how that came about, but there's also Billy Bob appears in The Apostle, which was the year
Yep.
later, which Duvall directed, and he also has like a really small part. And he's actually great in in that movie. I think it's only like for like 2 scenes, but he's really good in it. So it's kind of there might have been like a I don't know like a quid pro quo kind of situation of like you do my movie, I'll do your movie kind of thing because
Yeah.
it's kind of weirdly similar. And also the other almost like meta textual aspect of Robert Duvall being in the movie is that a lot of people sort of you know the character of Boo Radley that Duvall played in To Kill a Mockingbird has a lot of kind of similarities with
Mm.
Carl Childers as a character. So it's kind of that's an interesting kind of I don't know if that's intentional or not, but
Yeah.
people have like called that out.
Yeah, that's also interesting too. And I forgot. Yeah, Billy Bob Thornton showed up in The Apostle. I haven't seen the film yet, but I remember Cisco and Ebert praised The Apostle, and Billy Bob showed up in like a
It's a
clip or
very
two of it, and
similar
I'm like,
film. Yeah.
oh,
Very similar in
okay,
terms of like the
interesting,
style and like we've kind of mentioned the simplicity of it and the setting. So they're kind of a companion films in many ways, I think.
nice, okay. I'll check it out down the road.
Yeah.
There were a couple lines, or at least one line in particular, I thought was pretty funny. Early on in the film when Carl is being told by, the guy who runs the ward saying, why don't I, here the guy at the ward is recommending Carl to be like, all right, I'm gonna get you a job with uh, this like, what do you call it? It's like a repair shop or
Mhm.
whatever. And he's like, oh, I'll have to tell him about your history. And he said, I was never no good with history. And I'm like, okay, that was kind of funny.
Yeah, yeah,
Just the
that's
way he
good.
delivered the line, and even he was like, that's not what I meant, but okay. Uh, so that was good.
I
Um,
kind of like
and then
the.
even with the interaction, oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I'll jump in after
Sorry, go
this.
ahead. No, no, no. Well, I was gonna say I really like the interaction also that Carl had with Jerry's family when he tells him
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, I'll be sleeping over your house for the night, and I don't know why, but I kind of smirked a bit when the guy when Jerry opens the door to his daughter's room, and he sees Carl has just been sitting there the whole night, lurched over, and he's got all, and the bed still has, it hasn't been touched at all, so it
Yeah.
has all these dolls lying on top of the beds and such. And I don't know, it's just a little funny to be like, oh yeah, here's like a serial killer on his daughter's bed with
Yeah.
all the toys lying there, is like the most happy dory kind of thing. I don't know. I thought that was a bit of like an ironic joke for me, at least. So
Yeah. No, no, absolutely. And I think for me, like, if I've got to like really praise the screenplay for one thing, I think it is the fact that the characterizations are really strong. I think that every character definitely has their own personality and actually kind of has their own way of speaking, which I think, you don't always think about in a film, but there are definitely writers where, the characters sound like the writer, like, Tarantino, everyone kind of speaks like Tarantino. But if you look at all these different
yep,
characters, Carl and then Doyle and Vaughn, and Frank, that look if you look at those four characters, they're all completely different and have their own the dialogue is completely different for each character, but they all inform kind of who it builds the character and what and who they are in this story. So that really stood out to me, I think, is that he doesn't it's not kind of one style. Like everyone's kind of got their own thing happening, which I did think that was pretty impressive. And again, I don't know how much that he like worked with the actors and if they did kind of flesh out the characters in that way because the actors do seem to have a really good grasp on who they're playing. I just thought that was interesting. I thought the characterization was like really good. It was really good, and I think that's something that probably stood out the most of anything in this screenplay. If we just have to look at it purely as like a writing achievement.
even with the bandmates, they actually were
Mm,
able to stand out enough on their own. They're only in it for like one scene, maybe in the whole movie, and the actors playing them are good. But it also helps too. You are right though; like they have their own voice as characters. They feel like these are the kind of characters you would come across in Arkansas. These are the kind of characters that you would come across, and I do wonder if Billy Bob Thornton had created these characters' voices based on the buddies that he knew at
mhm.
the time, especially growing up within that environment. I think he was raised in Arkansas. I could be wrong, but it definitely did not come across like, oh, this is like movie dialogue. This felt like actual people talking, especially with how it's structured and how it has this like loose, shaggy feel to it almost.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and he cast his
and
friends as
once
well
again,
in the movie. Like
yes, he did. Yeah,
Dwight Yoakam, I
Dwight
think, is like his
Yoakam.
friend. He was at the Oscars with him, and that's also something that I'm thinking is I wonder if um, he wrote the part knowing that he was going to play it and knowing what his kind of style is. Like, if I just wonder how much were the roles written around the actors as well. I think maybe that might have happened, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, and even I don't know who the director was, and I might even brought this quote up too. It's like you write the actors to their strengths. You know, if you
Mm.
have a good director and a good writer, then the actor could play whatever role that well, they could play the role really well. So like you cast someone like Dwight Yoakam to play this kind of character and he does it really well. You have I'm trying to think of like another actor, maybe like Dwayne Johnson, you have him play a wrestler and he's like perfect as like this wrestler type character. You know, like you're not like don't put him in a role that they can't realistically do, or you buy them even like 20% of the time in said role. Like you're not going to put The Rock as like a neurotic character
Hmm.
in Southland Tales, or Samuel L. Jackson is this like wise Jedi master in the Star Wars prequels, when it's like, say motherfucker again with Pulp Fiction and Quentin Tarantino's dialogue. It's like you don't want to do that. It's like you have Sam Jackson, let him like do this like angry monologue speeches. Don't have him be just very dull and dry with his delivery.
Yeah.
So, but there are other actors who could totally play any of these roles and they'd be great. If Billy Bob had the money and he had the talent, resources on his hands, he could have hired Daniel Day-Lewis to play Dwight Yoakam's role if he wanted to.
Yeah, that's
So,
another that'd be interesting, an
yeah.
interesting movie. But
Yeah.
I think the other thing I just wanted to ask you about, and something that I really liked about it, and what you thought was, he actually lets a lot of scenes kind of play out in one take shots, and I think
Hmm.
that's almost like the actor kind of stage background, I think, coming through. But yeah, there are some really good long takes, I thought, especially the one where there's kind of two really back to back in the middle of the movie, where there's the first one where Doyle kind of, it's after like I think it's after like that concert in the backyard, and then he kind of has that meltdown where like there's a like the real rift in the relationship with the family, and Doyle and Carl kind of forms like, and he kind of storms out, and that's like a one take. And I think that's when like Lucas Black starts throwing stuff at him,
Yep.
and then the scene following that is when he's Carl's talking to Frank's mum, and he kind of reveals like why he was sent to like the state hospital, and I did like that, and like the scene with Carl and like Vaughn at the kind of the diner, like there's nice like long scenes that just he lets them just play
Hmm.
out, and I thought the dialogue and the interplay was really good, and I think again that's just like coming probably from like an actor stage kind of background. Just didn't know if, yeah, like what do you think? Did you kind of like the way he kind of lets it play out and had a lot of like long takes?
Yeah, the long takes I was actually okay with. I would have liked a little bit more variety in like the way the shots were created themselves, but I was okay with it personally, and a lot of it really stems from the acting and the writing, as I mentioned before. With you know most debut films, usually that's what you rely on the most because you have these limitations set upon you with the budget. You don't have this like you can't do an expensive crane shot or do anything that dangerous or crazy with a stunt you want to do. It's like, no, you're going to have to do something small scale. And this definitely does have that small scale feel to it, but in a way that works to the benefit of the movie. Even holding on that long take of, Frank throwing stuff at, at, the Dwight Yoakam's
Yeah.
character, I thought was pretty good. And I love this reaction where he's like, okay, shit, man. That was cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I like that scene a lot, and even yeah, the one with the biscuits in the kitchen. And what I also like about that scene is that Dwight, and not Dwight, what's his name, Carl, he's trying to alleviate the tension from what had just transpired with the abusive boyfriend and Linda, and he's trying to tell the joke about the two guys on the bridge and such, and it doesn't really land with her as well. And he's like, and he was like, get it? And it's like, oh yeah, I get it. And it's clear that it's like a lot of what Carl is seeing out in the world is rubbing off on him for better or for worse.
Yeah.
But she realizes that he's just trying, like, again, it sort of comes back to he's trying to just be this nice, caring guy for everyone, even though he doesn't look like it on the outside. He really does care for the people that he loves, and I like that aspect of him too. Even with how he's like, I think even though it's probably none of your business. I think you have the right. You and your son have the right to know that why I was in the loony bin or the mental ward, I should say, and yeah, and then it just kind of dawns on her, and I like that she doesn't get angry with him at all. She's not like, oh, how dare you
Yeah,
not
I like
tell
that
me,
too.
about that. And then even later on in the film, when she has that heart-to-heart moment with Carl about saying, you and Frank are a wonderful family you guys have, and I wish for the best of the best of luck to you guys. And even tells her, hey, I also fixed your I was like, washing machine, so your boy don't have to lug your clothes out of town into the washing machine place to get all of it done. And it's a really nice moment. and
Yeah,
and that was also a moment for me where I'm like, if you didn't get clued in by the hammer when
yeah.
he walks into the room, that was definitely the moment he was like, yeah, I gotta get rid of this guy immediately, because he's the longer he stays, the worse it gets for Frank and Linda.
But yeah, and I think if we kind of like, I guess, cut to the end, I did think that the most touching kind of scene is when he gives like Frank the books, and there's the note which says "You will be happy," and that you can tell like that really would have like tugged at people's heartstrings, and I think that's part of the emotional response people had to it. I just thought that was
Yeah.
like a beautiful moment. Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And yeah, like I said, I even though I didn't really get that emotionally choked up watching it, or wasn't that connected with the film, I definitely understand and appreciate why a lot of people love it. I think we had Andrew Corns on for the Train Spotting episode a while back, and it feels like forever now. Um, and he was like, he was like, I hope you guys don't diss my boy Billy Bob. I'm like, no, 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 no. I have every everything he has, whether it's the act, his performance, of the writing, I have no issues with whatsoever. And he's easily the reason why, if you are going to watch the movie, you should watch it for him.
yeah. Because I feel like your reaction's almost like yeah, it was good, but like kind of like calm down a bit with like like some of the over the top kind of praise. It's like it probably got, and then like definitely at the time looking at the awards, which I don't know if you want to transition to that yet, but
Yeah, sure.
uh if you have, I don't know if you've watched the clip of when he wins, and the audience response is just like insane. Like that's like the biggest response
Oh
of the whole
yeah.
night. Like people clearly were really into this narrative and this story, and like they freaking loved it when he won. Like it was
Yeah.
the
Yeah, it was
standing ovation. Like
it was almost like he won the lead actor prize. It's like
yeah,
he didn't even win lead actor. He won adapted screenplay, but it's like,
yeah,
all right, let's treat it as if he won that category. Yeah, so yeah, we'll transition into the award space. Bottom line, we both recommend the movie. However you're able to find it, go find it. It's I definitely would recommend it, definitely for the performance alone, and I'm really happy he got his Oscar. Speaking of Oscars, let's talk about the awards prospects of this. But before I do, I'll give a little introduction or transition piece on it. So, Sling Blade went through a festival run, starting with Telluride Film Festival, and went to the New York Film Fest, Chicago International Film Festival, Austin Film Festival, and a couple others, I think, as well. The film gained critical and audience acclaim, as we said, and it was considered a sleeper hit, making over $34 million on a production of $1 million. That's right, $1 million. This was the budget on, and it made 34 million, which is crazy. So, due to its box office and critical success, the film put Billy Bob Thornton on the map. As far as the Oscars go, as we mentioned already multiple times, it managed to win the adapted screenplay category over the frontrunner for Best Picture. The English Patient. Billy's performance was also nominated for lead actor, but had lost to Jeffrey Rush in Shine. In the adapted screenplay category, the film went up against The English Patient, The Crucible, Hamlet, and Trainspotting, which I've already said before. We've covered it with Andrew Corns on the podcast. So, yeah. So that's that. And yeah, so with all that said, why do you think this managed to win the adapted screenplay Oscar despite, as you even said, this being one of 3 films so far in the entire Oscar history to have won the category without a Best Picture nomination?
Man, like I've got a list, and it's like a pretty long list, I think, of reasons that all kind of tie into it.
Okay.
And that's kind of what I really wanted to talk about this movie, was because it is just looking at like, how did this actually happen? And I think it probably, like, it initially interested me. I probably saw, I would have seen that clip a long time ago of him winning, way before I saw the movie, and just being like, wow, this crowd like loved this moment and what was happening at that time. And I think reading a bit more into it is like, actually, when the nominations came out, like, people actually still didn't really know who he was, even at that stage. And I think the movie had made like $500,000. I think it was in like 4 theaters, mainly in like New York and LA. So that even like the fact that it got nominated was kind of like a miracle in these 2 categories.
Yeah.
But clearly, I think it's like a victory for Miramax, and speaks to like them at the height of their power, and that they saw this. I think they capitalized on these nominations. Like, we're going to make this thing explode. They actually put into more theaters. I think Billy Bob started doing like the talk show circuit. He became like a character, and this became like, every year we have these characters emerge in the Oscar race. These people that you don't know, that suddenly, whether it's someone like recently Fernando Torres, or someone like, you have people like Troy Kotzer, or the people that, these are just recent examples, people that you didn't know, then they appear, and then everyone kind of loves their story and what they've managed to do. And I think that's what happened. Somehow in those 6 weeks from the nominations to the award, he became a household name, and everyone loved him. So I think that's one really interesting aspect, is just that the campaign made this something that you wanted to root for, and that you wanted to see this guy win. I mean, that's the first thing. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because you mentioned Miramax as well, because I actually have on a page here from Oscar Wars. Highly recommend the book, as I said before in the episode and all other episodes too. That so Weinstein acquired the Billy Bob Thornton's micro budget film for $10 million, and as it's funny you made that Tarantino connection, because he actually tried spinning Thornton as this Tarantino style celebrity on tour. And yeah, he sprang into action literally the day they got the nominations.
Wow.
And not only that, but I'm not sure if you paid attention to my Train Spotting episode, Riley, but he actually called upon Bill Clinton to help out
Mhm.
with the awards campaign.
Yeah.
So he got access to Bill Clinton to say, how do I get voters to watch the movie and to meet up with Billy Bob Thornton? Because we already know that once you put Billy Bob Thornton in front of voters, he's a charming, nice dude, and at least to the voters. And I don't know how he is in real life. I'm not spreading any rumors. So, anyways, I'm just speaking awards, prospect campaigning, um, but yeah, no, he was able to pick his brain for spend half an hour with the Weinstein Company on the phone. It even says here that a Miramax staffer said, I lost all respect for him well before Monica Lewinsky, because I could see how much access the Clintons were giving to Harvey. So I guess they weren't too happy with that. Speaking of which, there was another person who was not happy about this campaigning at all, Anthony Minghella,
Yeah, I was
because
gonna say.
he at the time was not too sure if he was going to win director, but they said, nope, we know exactly the kind of whistles we're gonna blow, the kind of shoes we're gonna shine, and handshakes we're gonna have, and kissing babies we're gonna have with these people, and what they like and what they don't like. So that way we know we can get Billy Bob Thornton his adapted screenplay win, and then we'll give director to Minghella. But I also think, and we discussed this also off air too, with a certain director that may or may not happen this season. We don't know. Who knows? Maybe it's like we're recording this September 27th. Anything can happen from now until the Oscars. But I do wonder if part of the reason why Minghella lost the adapted screenplay Oscar is the fact that he was seen more as a director first, writer second, they definitely saw that more of a technical marvel to admire.
Yeah.
And The English Patient, much like Oppenheimer and the recent one, Battle After Another, it's a lot more of a visual storytelling type of movie. It relies a lot more on the visuals than it does the screenplay. The screenplay in of itself works well enough for the movie, but just like Lawrence of Arabia, you're not thinking about the script. You're thinking about the story, the visual storytelling that Anthony Michaela is doing for English Patient. Although I think personally
Yeah.
Lawrence of Arabia is much better, but
I
that's
sort
just
of
my
disagree.
theory.
I disagree to an
Okay.
extent. Like I think I actually love The English Patient. So
Oh,
full disclosure, but
okay.
I think as a screenplay, it's like it's actually very like literate and smart, and I think
Hmm.
part of it is the fact that it was viewed as this unadaptable book that was very non-linear and kind of dreamlike, and then and then Anthony Minghella somehow made it into a workable screenplay. He actually
Yeah.
said, I think that was like the hardest part of the movie was the screenplay. It wasn't like directing; it was the writing the screenplay. So I don't know. I definitely think the Academy viewed it as a visual thing, like, and that's part of it
Yeah.
is that epics rarely win screenplay Oscars, and I think I'm glad you brought up Oppenheimer, which is an epic and like a period piece, which I think both of those they kind of don't view like they kind of I think they view like modern stories with kind of everyday people as being like the writing movies, and epics is like the director movies. I
Yep.
think even things like Titanic, Ben-Hur swept the Oscars, didn't win screenplay. Titanic didn't even get
West Side
nominated.
Story.
West Side Story. I think one of the only ones that did win was The Last Emperor, but most of the time, epics just they Lawrence of Arabia didn't win screenplay. Like they just do not view epics
Yeah.
as being writing achievements, which that's another part of this that I want to touch on as well. Yeah, it's just like there is this genre bias, I think, with epics.
Well, I remember. Yeah, it's a good thing you brought up. And for the record, I meant by the Academy what they see
Yeah,
as like
yeah.
a writer, like director first, writer second. Because I personally consider someone like Christopher Nolan a writer first, director second, even though he's really good with the directing part. But I almost wonder. Going back to what I was saying though, there was actually another epic. Well, yeah, I would no, I would actually consider this an epic. Return of the King
Yeah.
as like an epic film, but like that was a different scenario than that of like where The Last Emperor was, which and I look forward to covering that on both Return of the King and Last Emperor on my Patreon podcast down the road. Um, but yeah,
Like
that was true though. Yeah, there was a whole issue going on with The English Patient where he had a really hard time adapting that book into a workable screenplay. But yeah, no, and once you see the movie, I mean, I'm not as high on the film as you are. But I did when I finished the movie, I could see why it just won the 9 Oscars it got. I mean, even if you took picture director out of the equation, it's still 7 Oscars. And I'm like, I'm okay with the wins. Are
yeah.
they going to be ones that I personally think are like the best of that decade? Probably not, but they're still worthy wins. Costume design, production, editing, even the score by
Yeah.
I can't remember the guy's name, but yeah, no, it's a well crafted movie, I would say.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think Anthony Minghella as well, he actually was pretty much an unknown as well in many ways. I think he directed like one other movie, but he wasn't known by Hollywood by any stretch. And maybe they're also like, look, we're going to give him best director. Like, do we really this guy that we don't really know? Like, we're going to start giving him like multiple Oscars on the one night, and like he that doesn't happen very often. Even for like big directors, like they're not going to start sweeping and win. Um, multiple above the line categories. And I think maybe that's it. Like there was like, we don't really know this guy yet. We'll give him the one award. We won't go overboard. And
Yeah,
but it's interesting. I think that Miramax sort of played this field. Like they kind of they had the pieces in place. And a big part of it was that for whatever reason, and I think it's a good performance, but early on there was this consensus that like, well, Jeffrey Rush is winning Best Actor. It wasn't Miramax, but they were like, he's winning Best Actor. Like I think people kind of viewed that as like a foregone conclusion, and that's why they went, well, we can't beat him in actor. So Billy Bob's best chance is to win screenplay. So they focused their energy on getting him the screenplay Oscar, getting Minghella the director Oscar, conceding Best Actor to Jeffrey Rush,
hmm,
and like it's almost like at this stage, at the height of their power, they could kind of move the pieces around. And I think we talk about that a lot today with where we kind of try to predict like, oh, well, like they're going to give this movie director, this movie screenplay, this movie picture, and it kind of always ends up being just the one movie winning all three, like Anora or Parasite or
Yeah,
Birdman. But the level of skill that Miramax had is that they were able to actually get voters to place their votes in specific categories and not just vote down the line. Like that's pretty impressive, I think.
I'm also looking through Anthony Minghella's films right now, at least the ones he directed. The ones he's done, A Little Like Drowning, Truly Madly Deeply, and Mr. Wonderful, they're all smaller scale comedic films in some respects, or at least one of them is. So I personally think this, this kind of fell into the, like, English Patient was kind of like, here's our, looking back, it was really the one and only chance that Minghella had at winning an Oscar, and it fit in line with what the Academy likes going for, which is like, even with Sidney Pollack when he won for Out of Africa, it's like,
Mm,
here's a guy who's known for doing a lot of comedy and drama films, but he's now hit that sweet spot. He's actually doing a movie that works for us, the snobby voters, and the general audiences, because it made a lot of money at the box office, or at least enough to where it was considered a bit of a hit. And I think with, yeah, Minghella was like, all right, sure. Here's, I get to win director, and the Coen brothers win screenplay. That was also the other thing too. Yeah, the Coen brothers was like, that was like, just like Billy Bob Thornton. It's like, all right, we're probably not going to win director,
yeah,
or at least
true.
Joe Coen won't. So let's have Ethan and Joel win for screenplay. And but going back to adapted screenplay though, I also find it interesting how, I even said this on the Train Spotting episode, and I'll say it again. That field was just really weak. Like, outside of English Patient, there just wasn't much there. And Train Spotting is a good nominee and it's a good movie, but they were not going to go for a punk rock movie
No.
like that.
Well, will we get
Um,
into the Hamlet of it all? Like the Hamlet getting a screenplay nomination when it's literally they just took all of Hamlet and filmed it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, it's like literally like word for word, I think.
it's a word for word adaptation. So it's like, what? How did that happen? That's like another question that I don't even entirely understand. But
I I'd have to assume they just like Brana enough to where, I mean, he this was like his fourth Oscar nomination he got at the time. He got two for Henry V, and then he got a live action short film nomination for Swan Song, I think it was. Yeah, and yeah, that man just kept raking in nomination after nomination like decades later. Um, yeah, so I don't
yeah,
know. I'd have to assume they just really liked it. And also too, it got three other nominations. It was score, production design, I think
probably
production design and
costumes maybe.
costumes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they definitely they
Um
liked it a lot. So
yeah.
there's actually a great book. I have to like recommend another book is Inside Oscar, which
Okay.
there were like two volumes, and the second volume covers this year, and it goes into like a lot of what you've already said, Matthew. But I think when Hamlet actually got nominated, like an actual Academy spokesperson had to like come out and say to justify the nomination because I think there were people just saying, "How did this? Like, what is like is William Shakespeare like now a nominee? Like, what's happening?" And
Yeah.
I think they said like, "Oh well, like the screenplay is it's like, all of like the blocking and the staging of the film. Like, it's not just the writing. So it might just come down to what your definition of what a screenplay is. That's kind of I guess how you could justify it. But yeah,
Even with the adapted screenplay category has always been kind of a confusing thing. Like, are you giving it to the film that was like the most faithful adaptation, or are you just giving it to the best movie of the lineup? And 9 out of 10 times, it's usually what the Academy thinks is the best film of the lineup. Um, because otherwise we would have gotten, I don't know, yeah, we would have gotten other movies that would have won adapted screenplay if it was like the most faithful movie. Also,
mm,
this would mean voters would have to take the time to actually read the source material if it was
yeah,
available.
yeah,
Because I know there are a couple of winners and nominees where their source material they're based off of is no longer in existence, or it's not available for public record.
yeah.
Like Moonlight was, where it's like no one is able to read the unproduced play unless you have access to that. I don't know if it's at a museum or something, but regardless.
And then
Um,
I think the only other nominee that we didn't touch on was The Crucible, which
yep.
again from Inside Oscar 2, the book was actually touted, probably at the stage that we're at now this year in this season, like late 1996 was like this is like going to be the winner. Like it was already like touted as like the front runner, that would kind of um, end up kind of sweeping. And I think it was like an Entertainment Weekly article, front page story about it, how it was just like, yeah, this is like going to win, and that didn't pan out at all. But again, it was like an Arthur Miller wrote the screenplay. It was kind of like recognizing him. But I think, yeah, that early buzz was enough to carry it over the line, even in this category. And as you said, it's like a weaker field overall.
Yep.
And I think, yeah, you could only really look at Sling Blade or English Patient as having any shot of winning out of these nominees.
Also, oh no, Crucible got an acting nomination, but the Crucible and Hamnet were not Hamnet, Hamlet. Bleh. I got Chloe Zhao's movie on the brain for the moment. But Hamlet and the Crucible were box office bombs.
Yeah, they were.
Like they were very much the case of like, and I also do wonder if those screenplay nominations for Brana and Arthur Miller were an excuse of like, all right, look, guys, the field is weak, as we've already mentioned now twice or three times at least. The field is weak. This is probably our only shot at really nominating Arthur Miller, who is a well-known playwright, for an Oscar nomination. And hey, we get to have Kenneth Branagh join the Writers Club. It's not like he'll ever be back again, right?
Yeah.
Oops.
It's also like it's the it's like the genre, like they're kind of serious movies that were actually looking up what was kind of being discussed as like potential nominees. Like The Birdcage was one, written by Elaine May, which maybe there's like a bit of comedy bias there, that it's not
Populist.
serious enough, it's too
Yeah.
populist. I think Emma, which was like a Jane Austen adaptation, some people thought would be a contender. Um, those are the only ones those are what come to mind at the moment. I think it was a pretty shallow field though to pick from. So yeah, I guess having Arthur Miller and William Shakespeare in the category, so to speak, was enough for the Academy.
Also, I'm looking up the guy who directed and wrote Emma, Douglas McGrath, who got an Oscar nomination for Bullets Over Broadway. So yeah, I guess he needed Woody Allen to really get him over the finish line. Because Woody Allen's also like a well-regarded writer of that branch, and I think that sometimes is just what you need too. Is like, but then again, we could say the same thing about Elaine May, and look what happened there. It's like
Yeah,
they had to wait until Primary Colors, like, all right, now let's get her back into the club. Like 2 years
yeah.
later.
And Emma did win
So
an Oscar that night, so it was on their radar. It did win this
yeah.
score comedy. And like looking at the WGA, they nominated, so Sling Blade won. They also the other crossovers were English Patient and Train Spotting. The two misses that the WGA had that the Academy didn't have were The Birdcage and Emma, which were the ones we mentioned. So I imagine those were like factored into people's predictions that year.
I'm curious to know. I'm looking on this live right now as we speak. I would like to know if they nominated the Crucible for any of the Screen Actors Guild categories. I don't think they did.
It's a good question, but Sling Blade was nominated for Best Ensemble.
Yep, ensemble and lead actor for Billy Bob Thornton. Yeah, so they did not give what's the damn movie? They did not give Crucible any SAG nominations. English Patient did get in. It got in for 4 nominations: lead actor, lead actress, supporting actress, and ensemble. But yet the Crucible didn't get in for SAG. And the reason why I bring this up is, it was early on when this started becoming a trend, but so far as we're recording, every adapted screenplay winner at the Oscars got some kind of SAG nomination.
Hmm.
So, and I think that correlates to the fact that Actors Branch are the ones who really push for certain screenplay category wins. We saw this with Green Book, where Mahershala had swept the year, but I do wonder with how divided that field was. It was just like, all right, let's just go with the film that us actors appreciate the most, or at least want to be like, all right, you actors did your best to make this material stick without having it feel too schmaltzy.
Yeah.
There's other screenplay winners like that.
I feel like
Anora's one where it's like, we admire your tenacity and your ambition to pull off this sex comedy and have a lot of dramatic moments in between. And stuff like that, and Mikey Madison was going to win the Oscar. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's enough about that.
I think historically though, like if you actually look at adapted screenplay, it's most of the time, and there are off years, but most of the time there are more Best Picture nominees in the adapted screenplay category than in the original screenplay. Like you could sometimes have years where all of the nominees for adapted were nominated for Best Picture, and
Yep.
you could have years where like there are heaps of kind of out of left field nominees in original which weren't factoring into the Best Picture race. So I think there's much more of a correlation. I guess it's like the kind of material that I don't know that the Academy gravitate towards are kind of things that are based on books or plays or
Short stories.
short stories more than I guess original screenplays, which I think typically that category is a bit more like of the kind of quirky underdog kind of films that aren't always factored into Best Picture.
But also too, adapted screenplay, and I just realized this too. Adapted screenplays, not all winners, but most of the winners, especially in the last like 10 years, they've gone to the crowd pleasing movies.
Hmm.
Especially ones that have gone through the festival ringer. Like typically, if you screen at TIFF, which this did not, and I don't know if TIFF was, I think TIFF was created at the time, it just didn't screen there. But usually, if you screen at the yeah, can't speak today, the Toronto International Film Festival, if you screen there, typically your chances of winning adapted are good. They're not amazing, depending on the field, but who knows? I mean, Conclave screened there and managed to win the adapted screenplay prize. We'll see how this year goes with adapted screenplay. Again, it's too early for that conversation, but who knows? And then the original screenplay, yeah, you're right, like the quirky underdog type films. But I also wonder too if those, for the most part, the original screenplay winners are typically going to the films that, again, that the writers are jealous of.
Hmm.
They're like, oh, I wish I wrote that kind of screenplay. Like it was that damn good. Because
Well,
I know
yeah.
Fargo at the time was touted as like a great screenplay and still is to this day. And a lot of people really fall head over heels for that film. And so that's just a theory I have.
Ben, can you imagine how many actors there would have been in 96 and 97 going like, damn it, like I wish that I wrote myself an amazing part like, like Billy Bob Thornton did, and like
Yeah.
kind of like looking at that as like a, something that they wanted to recognize because they're like, this is what we all want. We all want to write a great screenplay and give ourselves a great part and get nominated for an Oscar. I think
Yeah.
people love that. They love that. That's something that they
Definitely.
wanted to aspire to.
Mhm. I almost wonder also, this will be one of the last questions I have for like rhetorical question, of course. But I'd be curious to know if this was the last time we had, oh no, I forgot. Next year was Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. Okay, so that defeats the question. Okay, because I was gonna ask, was this the last time we had a lead actor in said film win an Oscar for the writing category, but not the acting Oscar? But then I realized Damon and Affleck won the next year with Good Will Hunting.
Yeah,
So
true.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, I
Um,
wonder how close Billy Bob was to winning Best Actor, given like clearly they loved him. So that could
oh
have been a couple of votes difference, maybe.
yeah, I think he was a lot closer than Ray Fiennes and Tom Cruise easily.
Yeah,
Because
I think Ebert might have predicted him, maybe potentially. I think I remember reading that he either predicted him or said that if there's going to be like a big upset, it's Billy Bob winning Best Actor.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Because if that had happened, it'd be like, whoa.
and
But
Jeffrey
yeah, no,
Rush said that he thought that Billy Bob was going to win because I guess he was like looking at how it was playing out. He's like, they
oh
clearly love
wow.
this guy. He was like, I don't think I'm going to win anymore because he just saw how the room was like responding.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, no, I would have loved to have seen that moment happen. But regardless, I'm happy he got the one Oscar for adapted screenplay.
Yeah, like everyone's
You
happy.
know,
Like Minghella got his Oscar, Billy Bob
yeah,
got his Oscar, Brano
yeah.
eventually got his Oscar. People are,
I can't believe you even just threw that in my face. Like, I can't believe you just like, yeah, Brana got his Oscar. Anyways,
has to be
um,
mentioned.
yeah, yeah. Anyways, yeah, the Coen brothers, they got their Oscar and they would win their trifecta years later. So that's
We just
nice.
need to
Yeah,
get
everyone
Mike
got
Lee
what they
his
want.
Oscar, then we're good.
I'm sorry.
We just need to get Mike Lee his Oscar.
Yeah, I'm. Oh
Probably
man,
not
I'm
going to
getting really
happen.
worried about that guy because if if the rumors are true, or at least if we're right about Paul Thomas Anderson finally getting his due, then Mike Lee, and I think him and Bradley Cooper are like next in line as like in terms of filmmaking Oscar nominations they got respectively. Bradley Cooper and Mike Lee, I think, are tied in with 7 nominations apiece.
Yeah, I think Mike Lee, let's be honest, probably isn't ever going to win an Oscar, but I definitely think they should consider him for an honorary Oscar at this
Oh,
stage.
totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I think he'll
Um,
get because clearly, like, they know him, like he's been nominated a bunch of times. Like, it's a matter of time before they give him. But maybe they think he's still got a couple of movies in him that he could win for, and they don't want to jump the gun too soon.
yeah. I mean, they gave David Lynch his honorary Oscar. Rest in peace to him.
Yeah.
Robert Altman, Sidney Lumet. I think Hitchcock won an honorary Oscar too, or
Hmm.
something.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah. So who knows? Michael Lee will probably, yeah, he might get an honorary Oscar. I didn't
And
get a chance. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Lauren Bacall, who was nominated for the first time in '96, didn't win, but actually did get an honorary Oscar in like 2009. So it could happen.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that win, or that loss, I should say, for Lauren Bacall, that was like, God, last season was just such a, like, the moment my buddy Jack brought that up to me, and I was like out of context or something else I think we were talking about, and instantly I was like, oh, there's my proof. There's my proof that Mikey's gonna win for a Noah right there. And he
It's
just
yeah.
unexpectedly gave me the grenade to be like, oh, I have the excuse to throw it. Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, Lauren
So,
Bacall is like that's like now the shorthand for like just a massive Oscar upset. It's like, oh, it's going to be like the Lauren Bacall situation, whether it's there like Demi Moore, Stallone, Eddie Murphy,
yeah,
Glenn Close. Like it's Lauren Bacall is like the prototype of the overdue veteran that everyone thinks is going to win and then doesn't win.
doesn't. Yeah. Yeah, and we've already said this before, but like, you look at the history of the Oscars long enough, they tend to repeat every once in a while. Not all the time, but
They
it
do.
comes back in a circular motion,
Yeah,
and
we probably will have a Sling Blade at some point again.
yeah. I think it's going to be harder for a film to win the screenplay categories without picture in a field of 10. If we went back to 5, it'd be a lot easier, I think.
It just
Um,
depends on if you think Sling Blade was like in the 10, which is hard to say because it wasn't very widely seen before nominations came out.
yeah.
But I think it would have been like a Coda situation where pre-nominations it wasn't widely seen, and then in the lead up to the actual awards, everyone started getting on board.
Well, even Nickel Boys was like another film where it's like it wasn't widely seen enough by the public outside of festival buzz, and it still got into Best Picture.
Or I'm Still Here.
So who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Still Here's another one. That's another great example where it's like they did it, and yeah, I'm really happy that those two got in. Otherwise, we would have gotten a shit field. But that's enough
Well,
about that.
Sing Sing would have been good too, but
Yeah, no, of
yeah.
course. Yeah, that would have been awesome. But the Academy said no. We want one, uh, 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 very, I don't know. Well, you know what? I'm gonna abandon that joke. Let's not get into that. I've already dodged enough landmines. Let's not step on that. So, anyways, yeah. So that's pretty much it. I don't really have much else to say about the awards campaign or awards trajectory for this, other than glad Billy Bob is an Oscar winner, and I'm happy that he has the career he has, and I look forward to seeing One False Move, I think
Yeah.
he wrote and directed, or not directed, but wrote and starred in. So I'll
I think
check
that
out that down the road.
yeah, I think the last thing I'll say is about the award part of it is like this was definitely like this is a time in history where we don't even really have anything like it today, where there's something like a Miramax who could just work in a way they could work miracles for performers and for screenwriters and directors in that they just went all out. And that's the kind of the context of this win. I think this is in a vacuum of that specific time and place. And yeah, I I don't know. I don't think it's missed at all that degree
Yeah.
of campaigning and obviously it happens a lot still, but this was like its own beast this time in Oscar history.
Yeah, it's very much not quite as big, but like the To Leslie kind of campaign where it's like,
Oh
how
yeah,
the hell did this happen? So,
100%.
anyways, so yeah, like I said, Riley, thank you for coming back on to the show. I hope to have you on a lot more sooner than the gap was from the last
Thanks,
episode to this.
man.
I think we have another episode planned, but I won't
Yeah,
share to our audience what it is yet. But yeah, I'll probably have you back on a lot sooner than this was, like I said. So yeah, so thanks again for being on the show. Is there anything you'd like to plug in on where our listeners can follow you along after the episode is finished?
um, I just have pretty much my letterboxed. That's the only kind of social platform that I really use. So if you want to follow me, it's RJ1994, and yeah, I'll be doing reviews and ratings on that page, so you can follow me there.
Awesome. As for myself, you can follow me and the show through Linktree under at Matthew995, where you can follow along on all my social media accounts, such as Twitter and Letterboxd. On the same site, I provided a link for where you can listen to more episodes of the show through Spotify and YouTube. We also have a Patreon page where you can check out more bonus episodes on After Hours, where we talk about Lone Tech winners, Lone Director winners, which we might get more into that next year. I don't know. We will also be going into a bit more of the screenplay winners that beat out the lone screenplay nominees. So stuff like Honora, Manchester by the Sea, The Bad and the Beautiful, we'll cover on that episode on that channel. Right now, as of recording, we only have LA Confidential up, but I promise by the end of the year we will have more of these like screenplay winners beating out the lone nominees. And I'm gonna start kicking that into high gear as well. So yeah, we're gonna get the ball rolling on that too. Um, but yeah, so yeah, if you'd like to become a membership, it's only $3 a month. Appreciate any and all support that you guys can give. If you don't have the money, that's fine. Just at least spread the word. It's much appreciated for me because you're not only supporting the show, but you're also supporting myself. And if you're interested in being in the hot seat like Riley has here today, let me know, and hopefully we can arrange that happening soon. In the meantime, we hope you enjoyed listening to this episode, and we hope to see you at the movies. Take care, guys.